In this video, we're going to show you how to use the define function, which is the := symbol in Calculate, and then be able to use the things you've defined, such as a list or a function or naming a list, and be able to use it in several different places throughout the Classpad.net environment. So you could define it in Calculate, but then use it in graphing or use it in tables. So that's what we're going to be exploring. It's really simple to use. It simply means you're defining something that anytime it's then showing up later somewhere in your paper, it already knows what it is and will use it appropriately. So we're going to go into the Calculate sticky. So here's my options right here. I'm going to go into the first one, which brings up my soft keyboard. And you'll see right here we have our equal symbol, but we also have this : which is our define symbol. So let's say we want to do something as simple as define a list. So we're gonna, let's just call our list list. How boring is that? But instead of saying equals, I'm going to hit : and now I'm going to define my list. And for a list, we need our little curly-Q brackets. So let's just put some numbers in here. And when I hit enter, it's going to just say, okay, we've defined your list to be this. That's what we know it is. But now, because it knows that my list, I've named it list, and I could name it anything. But if I do another calculation with it, let's say I want to now do 2 times list, and I'm going to use the name. When I hit enter, it's going to take that list I've already defined and multiply everything in it by 2. So I never have to retype the list. I can just use it in several different locations, right? So I could define another list. Let's say, let's call a list girl. So again, notice I'm using the : to define it, and let's make this list just be slightly different. Let's do 3, 4, 6, 7, 10. I'm going to try to make sure I have the same number of elements for a reason. Oh, let's just, I'm obviously not right. Okay, so now there's girl. So now I could do, and we could even go back and rename our list. Let's rename our list here as boy, and watch what happens. I just renamed it, and now if I change this to boy as well, just to clarify, but now I could do girl times boy, and it's going to multiply my terms by each other. Okay, so interesting things. I could do the ratio of boy to girl, and it's going to show me a ratio of each of those. So lots of things you can do once you define something. You can use it several different places. I could now maybe make a table. So let's go to table, and remember everything in Classpad is somehow interconnected. So if I put up here boy, it's going to look to see if I've defined it, and when I hit enter, it's just going to fill in my table for me. So really nice interesting features. Let's say I want to define the ratio of boy to girl. So let's define ratio to be the boy girl. So notice I defined ratio to be this. I didn't just do the ratio. I defined the word ratio to be this. So now if I go up to my table, I can use ratio, and it's going to fill in my ratio of boy to girl. So lots of great things that happen if you've already defined it in Calculate. Let's go down and let's create a different Calculate sticky just so that we can start over here. Let's say I want to define some functions. So if I define a function, let's say f of x is going to be, so again, : and let's just make up a function here. Oops. So there's my function. It's going to say done. We've defined your function, but now I can do fun things like, okay, since my function is defined, I can find a specific value of that function. It's going to simply go back in and plug that in. I could use words, so let's do cat. So it's going to simply replace, since my function is defined, it's going to replace the x value with that number. So if it's a number, it actually calculates as it did here. If it's a variable, multi-character variable for here, it just simply replaces it. I could do f at a, and it's going to show you that. So you can really help students understand what that means. Let's define a second function. And let's say we do colon equals, and let's do a 3x plus 5. Okay, so it's a linear function, so we could go through the same things, but now we could do some compositions. Let's do f of g at x. What does that mean? And we end up with this substitution thing, which is really exciting for students to see. Oh, how did this happen? Well, g of x was 3x plus 5. And so there's my 3x plus 5, but then we took that whole 3x plus 5 and plugged it into the f of x. So that's what composition means. So what would g of f of x look like? It's going to look different, right? Because we're taking f of x and plugging it in for every time we see x. So really interesting things you can explore, and because you've defined them, let's pull up a graph sticky. We could actually just say, okay, graph f of x. I don't have to type it out again. It's just going to graph it because it's already defined. And now let's graph g of x. Oops, I put a 0 in there. Did not mean to do that. And now I can see my graphs right away. And then let's see what that function of f of g of x looks like. Oops. Oh, I forgot to put y equals, sorry. So there's the composition one way. So let's now look at the composition the other way, g of f of x. So you can do a lot of explorations without having to retype them, because you've defined them in Calculate. Anytime that you use them in any other application, any other sticky, they're automatically there because they're defined. And so that really is very helpful in tables. It's helpful in making quick calculations, those types of things.